All right, I think so. That should do it. Yeah. All right, cool. This is fun. There's supposedly one viewer, which is already nice, but I think I'll probably swap to something I haven't started. That way I can start. Okay. Here we go. That should help. And that way because I use this to,
You can just use from wipe the speaker up there.
well, I'm gonna use this to like dab on anyways.
Yeah, it'll be good.
So, okay. Cool. Since this is a brand new figurine, I'm gonna have to start with probably, I'm afraid to like,
Yeah.
yeah, there we go. Because then at that point, it'll be like that. Lovely little paladin holding a lantern. She's already been primed, and I used liquid prime, just gray gesso to prep it, and took a couple of coats. But for her, I'm thinking of a color scheme that's, well, you always got to start out with your browns and your blacks. And I want to paint the hardest to reach spots first. So I will probably get into her shield and her clothes, probably into her boots and back here. But let's see. I think a nice, let's start with red for her.
Talk about your clever trick of
Yeah.
attached to the top of it.
Yeah, so I use pill bottles often to put my models on because I don't want to pay for the extremely expensive fancy handles. And since I have my own medications, Walgreens is best because their labels will peel off instantly. CVS sucks, and CVS's labels are impossible to get off, and they're sticky. But I think I learned this trick from one of the first people who taught me how to paint. I want, yeah.
As I've gotten older, I find it to be much easier to navigate it as well, to navigate the model, having the nice round object to hold on to instead of trying to hang on to a base that can be whatever shape or size.
I started out with tweezers, but I kept dropping them all the time. So I still have a pair of paint-covered tweezers, it's probably sitting in my desk somewhere.
Yeah.
But a bottle's a lot easier. I just use sticky tack. I don't even super glue it or anything. I use sticky tack, and then the bottle is nice because you keep the extra stuff in there. And it's a nice little portable piece of equipment. And I use fairly cheap paints. Your standard paints, I usually get them from Walmart or at Michael's if I get a good coupon from it. But I prime, paint, and I save the more expensive paints for finer details because they have a lot more pigment in them. And it's a lot easier to get a solid color because you can see I'm painting on this first layer of red, and it's fairly see-through, but first layers always look awful. And I usually will have 2 models at a time so that I can paint and let one dry and go work on the other. Or if I'm feeling particularly like I need to get something done, then I will go ahead and pull out a hairdryer and do that. So I'm gonna let that red dry. spot. Get that back. I've added a little bit too much water to this red, so it may take a little bit longer, but that first coat is important because you need that nice even background base. I'm not sure what the proper term for it is. So yeah, layer number 1. So while that's drying, I'll move back to my lovely little, I think an elfin sort of mage. She's mainly purple. She originally had a bright blue cloak, but it didn't work very well, so I darkened it up with gray, and I dry brushed it with a dark, kind of the original what the blue was. And she's nearly done. She just needs more of the fine details. I need to get her hair and her face, which skin colors can be very annoying, but a good boring beige will form most red-blooded skin tones. Say if you have a blue-blooded creature, then a nice blue will be a good base, or a green for green-blooded, but a beige works pretty well for most red-blooded creatures because you can add in browns, reds, and yellows from there to
fine-tune your tone.
yes, to fine-tune the tone as to what kind of shade that you do want. There and here. She's got a rough, here we go. I know, I'm figuring this out. She's got a rough coloring already, but it's a bit too see-through and doesn't stand out very well. So I'm gonna go over her face. One thing with smaller figurines is that you have to be careful with how many layers of paint you put on them, because then the fine features will get covered up.
Like eyes.
Yeah, and then she's got a pair of itty bitty little ears. But I started model painting back when, probably 2014. I didn't always live in Texas. I actually was born in California, lived most of my life in Maryland, and then mostly in Virginia. But there was this wonderful store in Virginia called the Dragon's Hoard, and it was a gamer's place that was heaven to me. They had all sorts of board games and whatnot, and a lot of 40K players, and I first learned how to paint from them because they would come in and hang out. Goodness, I can't remember really any of their names, but they were really kind. I was already an artsy person who liked to paint. But they taught me, and gave me a couple of, broken, cracked pieces or stuff that they weren't going to use anymore to teach me how to paint. You do need a fair amount of hand dexterity to do it. Because with models, unless you have one of the bigger ones, like here is my thumb, and this is a standard, 25 millimeter model. So you could go from that, or you can go all the way up to what I have over here, which is a giant dragon. But technically this is only a young blue dragon, but you can see the size difference in them. And of course the bigger models get more expensive and save up. I like to buy either from my local game store, which here is the Gathering Place, and they were wonderful. And when I first moved here and first visited them, they hooked me up with a couple of extra models and paint supplies, because unfortunately a lot of my paint was destroyed in the move. They're a good group of people, so if you live around this area, Texas, I can highly recommend the Gathering Place. They've been nothing but kind to me. And the few times I've stopped in, they also have people there, just like the Dragon's Horde, who will go and paint and just kind of hang out. It's a good group of people.
One of our esports students is also a manager there, and she does a lot of D&D training for new players. We miss having her around as much this year since she got promoted.
I'm new here, but I've heard nothing but good things about her. She seems like a pretty awesome person. Okay. I tend to either do skin tones first or last, depending on how much skin is being shown, because it's easier to go from dark to light and not from light to dark. You'll end up putting a lot more layers on to try and cover up one dark spot than what you'll need to try and cover up a light colored spot. Let's see, with purple hair and a dark gray cape, or purple clothes, I think I'll do maybe a silvery color for her hair. But I gave it a moment. Oh, it looks like that first layer is dry on the Paladin. Important thing is to do layers with kind of that are really thin, a little bit watered down of your paint. You don't want the paint to be thick and clunky, because it'll take longer to dry and it's more likely to be tacky to the touch.
Also fill in your model details as well, like your eyes and stuff that she was mentioning earlier.
Yeah. Right now I'm doing extra layers on the creases in between of her, is it a cape or is it a robe? I'm not sure what the technical term is for that kind of battle skirt where you have the piece in the front and then coverage in the back. But since she has such lovely folds that are there, I want to highlight them so that they show up a little bit better. So I'll do a layer in the folds first, and then I'll go back over the whole piece of clothing with another layer, because it's fairly thin right now. But yeah, I've started model painting back in probably 2013, 2014 when I first started going to college. And for me, it's a very zen sort of thing. I like doing painting for just like regular paintings, but figure painting is my favorite because I try to play a lot of D&D, and it's really nice to be able to bust out your own figurine for the table, and you've painted it yourself. It looks pretty good. I will say that I am not an expert painter by any means, but what was it that there's a YouTuber like North of the Border. He makes some pretty amazing creations. Highly recommend him on YouTube. But it's not just good, it's good enough. I don't want stuff to be perfect. I don't need it to be perfect. I just want it to be good enough. Now, every adventure has a lot. Probably the most important colors that you will need as a figure painter are browns. Browns, I'd say at least 2 shades of brown, maybe 3. But most adventures have a lot of leather on them. So I'm gonna paint that front piece of her skirt. I'm gonna paint it a nice kind of lightish brown, because I can definitely go darker than this. Where is that blurry sweet spot? There we go. This is my first stream, so I am figuring out how to do this and how to get the focus. Normally I'd have a very paint splattered desk at home. And acrylic paint can be a little difficult to get out of clothes. Easy to get off of skin, you just need a little bit of scrubbing. Let's get pants to be nice brown as well. You always want to paint from the inside out, because the hardest to reach parts, say like in between legs here, or in between her shield and her back, you're more than likely going to accidentally paint where you don't want to, so you paint them first. Good thing is with such little bits of paint, it's easy to wipe off any mistakes. And you can see this brown is a lot better than that red, which is funny because it is the cheap Artist Loft brand brown. I only really need 1 layer to get it where I want it to be. But with that red, I'm gonna have to probably do a few layers, but then it is the bigger piece, or the bigger part. Right now I'm trying to work on more player characters, because we're trying to get a D&D group up, and if I have a bunch of pre-painted figurines, then new players can just borrow one instead of having to worry about either buying their own, since everyone here is a college student and income is limited. And also, it's fun to just provide the supplies for a game. Yeah, see how I am trying to paint into here, but I'm accidentally painting over the shield as well? That's why this is going to be a fairly annoying area to try and get, because I have to stick my paintbrush fairly deep in there. And I was like, why bother? Why bother painting the piece that is gonna barely be seen and nobody's really looking at it? And it's, I don't know. I would know that it's not painted, and it would bug the bejesus out of me just to know that there is a spot that is still either that boring gray or whatever color your primer ends to be. I have 3 colors of primer. I have gray, white, and black. Though gray I only have in the liquid form. And liquid is definitely harder to try and prime with, but spray paint primers, which is the other one that I use, it's very hard to get them into the primer into the nooks and crannies of smaller figurines, so sometimes you really just need to hand paint everything. Though I do prefer to spray paint because it's fun and I enjoy it. Though my grass with its white and black spots on it probably doesn't like it very much. Yeah. Let's see. If we've got a red cloak and brown pants, I can see that she's wearing armor, but she does have an undershirt on. So let me paint those little cloth bits. And with model figurines, it's all about the details. The more expensive miniatures will have more detail than the less expensive ones. I've gotten figurines from local game store. I will also buy them online. In bulk, I'll get them usually from Amazon, like your generic monsters and stuff. But for special creations, I'll usually go to Etsy instead, actually, and find one of the smaller creators and order from them, because there are some absolutely amazing homemade miniatures on Etsy. My mother has asked me to paint her a phoenix, so I found a shop and I've got a order from them with, I think, a phoenix. I think it's some sort of dragon creature, and a couple of like smaller ones, and it's coming all the way from Greece. So it's gonna be a little while before it gets here, but I know that it'll be so much fun to paint. The phoenix is huge. It's probably bigger than my hand. And that's the one that kind of what my mom picked out. For me, I'd say that my personal favorite mythical creature is Heart. I don't know, there's a lot of good ones. I'm a good old-fashioned horse girl, so probably some sort of unicorn, something like that. But I've recently learned about, I think it's Perytons, P-E-R-Y-T-O-N. I'm not sure how you pronounce it, but they're kind of similar to griffins, but instead of having a lion part, it's deer. So it's like a deer with wings. And I thought those were pretty cool. I read about them in a book I've recently been reading called Soul of the Pack. I'm not sure who it's by. I can't remember. Honestly, names are just terrible for me. Which is probably a good thing I didn't end up becoming a teacher. I was going to till my health took a turn, but probably have the worst trouble remembering my students' names. Spread. I think probably for the future I'll have a light that comes just like down here, because right now these are lit up better than where or at least it doesn't look as lit up. I'm going to take some of the brown and put it in the creases here. Try and get, yeah. And then we'll put another layer on the shield, because the first one seems to be mostly dry. For a while when I lived in Virginia, I did commissions a little bit, just kind of for other people in the D&D groups. But I used to have a much larger collection of figurines that I had painted. But when we moved from Virginia to Texas, a lot of my stuff either got lost or destroyed. So I ended up having to replace it. Which is a good excuse to buy whole new supplies, whole new figurines, and start all over again. But
nothing wrong with starting fresh sometimes.
no, nothing wrong with it. It's just some of those figurines I wish I could have kept because they were some of the. I don't have the first one I ever painted anymore, which is, you know, an important one. You want to keep it. I think one of the oldest ones I have is. Let's see if.
So dark.
Yeah, I think a light.
Right.
Yeah.
I was thinking, I wonder if I can move this over here somewhere.
But it was from a character in the campaign before I moved, but she was a little halfling rogue. It was one of the favorite ones I've ever had because she was tiny, even for a halfling. But she had a properly war-trained war horse, and not just any war horse, it was a Clydesdale. So we put this itty bitty little rogue on a Clydesdale and sent her off to battle, and she was one of my favorite characters that I've ever done. She was one of my favorite characters I've ever played too, because my goodness, I got into, as being a smaller than usual halfling, I got into quite a lot of trouble. And if you've never learned about how they train war horses to be able to fight independently, there's nothing like, you know, I don't know what the weight is, but a couple thousand pounds shod in iron horseshoes coming down on your body. You're goners after that.
This one might be like
Yeah.
annoying reflecting off the back of your glasses or something.
There we go. That's a lot brighter. It's just finding that I've got it right about where I can keep it in focus, right around here. I actually did a little bit of research before this first stream to try and figure out how others stream painting models, because it's hard. It's tiny. It's not like capturing a game screen. I'll leave the belt for later. It's easy to capture game screen, and games are made much more for people to see easily, but with painting miniatures, it's a whole different scale.
It's literally 2 inches.
Yes. Especially if you're sticking to either the 40K or the D&D standard. Now that red is a lot more solid. You can see, I think it's layer, what, 3 or 4? And I'd call that pretty solid. You can actually see it now. But painting is fun. I like blending colors. I like acrylic, though you do have to sometimes work fast because acrylic can dry fairly easily. Or not easily, but very quickly. So once it's dry, it's formed that kind of like plasticky layer. It's harder to chip it off or replace it, though if you really do need to start from the beginning, then good old-fashioned isopropyl alcohol will take that sucker right off. Alright, I'm gonna let that red dry. Let's go back to the lovely magician here. I need to put another layer on each of her ears, so it really shows off that she is an elf. Though with her purple royal robes, I'd probably call her a high elf, depending. And get another layer on the hands. I'm going to leave the staff for last because it's one of those pieces that is just going to get covered with paint as you go. Let's, maybe got the brown out. Let's see what brown looks like for her hair. She's got a nice braid. And I work from big to small because it's easier to put on all your base colors and base coats and everything, and not have to worry too much about painting within the lines. But with this one, I'm at the stage where I need to. Trying to make sure so the shadows aren't so heavy. Where would it be better on a black background? I don't know. But I think brown works out better than silver for this anyways. You gotta remember to keep my hands up in a certain position. But I think, like I was saying before, brown is one of the main colors you will use a lot. You will use a lot of gray, you will use a lot of browns, and depending on your preferred skin tones, you'll probably end up using a lot of beige. I love beige. Beige is a great base color for beige or bone white, or I think mine is very fancily called unbleached titanium. I can't get a longer name than that. Oops, dipped that in the wrong color. But it's just a good way to start. If you want lighter skin colors, you'll add some very light, either light oranges or light browns and a little bit of red. If you want darker, you'll add darker browns, more terracotta colored to get that correct. Though if I have something like an orc, which is more green-blooded or blue-blooded, depending on what mythos you want to follow, then I will start out more with a lime green to start as a base color, and then from there I'll add my greens and blues to make up the green skin color, because since we are red-blooded, we have the red underneath, given that hue, gives it a lot of warmth. Or unless you're going for more sallow skin, instead of browns and reds, you'll add probably yellows, not really oranges, but more like light yellows, maybe a little bit of oranges, brown, and very sickly colors, I'd say, if you wanted to go in the more pale sort of necromancer route. And orcs are fun to paint because they are covered in scars and bruises, and just like their bodies are a tapestry, a story. So you can add in a lot of embellishments. But for my fancy little high elf here, probably won't do any scars. Though I might try it. See, the eyes are so absolutely tiny that I will say that I am not perfect at eyes. Definitely not perfect at eyes. So I tend to, and here's a tip from me, to get a good eye without having to or accidentally putting it over the whole face, is instead to just take a toothpick Because my hands always get super shaky when I'm doing those 5 little bits, because even with a well-painted character, if you have weird looking eyes, then it kind of ruins the whole thing. There's nothing like having a serious orc painted figurine and then it's got googly eyes. It's hard to take that creature very seriously. Okay, I'm trying to like examine her while also keeping her within the camera. I like that brown. I think that it's like a very reddish brown, and I often use it as a base for when I'm painting leathers, but she is a magic user and doesn't have any leathers on her, so all she has is purple. Come on, you can focus. You can do it. I don't know how well this is gonna work with figure painting. It's just so small. I wonder. I've been trying to figure out how others do it, and it is confusing to make it a good stream for a viewer. A lot of them talked about how they kind of end up being the conversation is what's important. So for me, who's never done this before, I'm learning how to do that proper conversation. I am talking to myself in an empty room. But I've been playing D&D since... Oh yeah, let's just do a giant topic jump. It's nothing like... completely switching. But yeah, I've been playing D&D since high school. I'd have to say Pathfinder has been one of my longtime favorites, though 5e is not too bad. But for most of high school and college for me, I've mainly played Pathfinder, and I do like Pathfinder. Though each DM's got their own homebrew and their own rules and everything else. I'm hoping to find a Pathfinder group here. Be nice. Alright, let's see if we can give her some eyes. So, you can use regular paintbrushes. I splurged out and I got a set of very nice, fancy, fine modeling brushes, but you don't have to. You can buy just kind of the smallest size you can find at Walmart or Michael's, or whatever your preferred art store is, or you can buy it online. Amazon's not great, but honestly, even when you buy from... Don't roll away now. Even when you buy from a local store, oftentimes they will ship through Amazon anyways, because Amazon's fulfillment service is, from what I understand, very, very extensive. So I've had a few times where I've bought stuff from what I thought was a small business, but it turns out they came in an Amazon package anyways. So trying to stay away from Amazon is not really feasible for me. I wish it was though. And I'm bracing my hands, and I think I'm gonna give her red eyes. I'm just gonna do, you don't always have to brush. Sometimes you can just dab, and little dots will still get the color on just fine. And if you royally mess up, like I did there, it's pretty easy to just grab paintbrush, a little bit of water, and since it's on a dry layer, come on, you normally can just scrub it off. Because I ended up painting her nose. I think for these painting streams, at least in the future, I'm gonna do bigger figurines, because honestly the little ones aren't just aren't showing up very well. But then I did bring a few bigger ones with me, and I don't mind painting or spending the money on it now that I have a little bit of disposable income. Unlike when I first started out, it makes it a little easier to kind of indulge on this. I think I originally got a pack of these minis I got again from Amazon, but I think for like, it was like 20 figurines for $20, and they're not the best quality. And they're not like nicely sanded down. I could have taken the time to sand them, but it didn't really feel like it. They're good enough. Let's see if I can give her some lips. Always brace my hands on the table and on the bottle itself. Again, that pill, using a pill bottle makes it. But then my hand is not so shaky, and that works. I'll put her aside and give a try to the paladin, whose red is coming out very nicely. I think for the future I'll bring in some of and paint the bigger ones, because I think that'll work out better rather than these ones. I have a couple more big ones. I have a couple of figurines on the way. My mom wants me to paint her a phoenix because that's her favorite. And I ordered one off of Etsy from a seller, and it's coming all the way from Greece. So it's going to be a little while before it gets here.
It's definitely working a lot better with the better lighting.
Yeah, definitely.
Definitely helping the camera find something to focus on.
Now that I've got her underclothes as she rolls away, I'm going to paint her armor, which I'm going to do first in black as a base, and that way when I paint the silver and gray on top, it pops just a little bit more. Let's switch to this. So yeah, armor is a lot of fun to paint. I'm a sucker for glittery things, so I actually have a whole pack of metallic paint, which I'll use on the fine details and the finishing bits. Which, if you don't want to buy, it's easy to just pick up a bottle of mica powder and mix it in with regular paint, and there you go, you got glittery metallic paint. But the silver and the gold are the two that I use the most, but it makes them show up a lot better when you paint them over, starting on a darker color first and then gradually moving to lighter, because once I get a basic coat on her, then I will probably do a dark wash, which everybody and their mothers has their own recipe for, and I just use water, a little bit of the paint, though I did pick up some ink. If you use ink, it's much more permanent, so it stains the plastic decently well. So if you change your mind, it's going to be hard to go back from a dark ink wash, but you can use dark paint, water, and a little bit of dish soap, because supposedly that helps keep it from pooling and cracks and crevices.
By nature, the ink is usually a bit shinier of a finish as well.
Mm-hmm. I like this figurine, this paladin, because she's all kitted out and she looks like a proper adventurer. Because she's got her armor and her pieces, but she's holding a lantern. There's a little owl right here. He's holding her mace, her bag, everything. She is armored up the wazoo. And I prefer to play paladins when I do D&D just because, I don't know, I like them, but depending on the DM, lawful good to me is not lawful stupid. Following my view of a paladin is that they are lawful good in that they are following the rules of their deity, their whoever they worship. So if you have a paladin who's following, say, a darker deity or darker god, then being lawful good to them is, darker deeds and whatnot. And say you kill somebody, you're still technically lawful good because you are still following your creed and code. And it's not just good old Superman lawful good, which I find really boring to play after a while. And since I've played a lot of paladins, you kind of do have to mix it up. So I prefer moral codes that make a bit more sense, because it's more likely that a paladin and of course I cannot remember any of the gods, but a paladin of someone who is more chaotic would have more chaotic actions, or a paladin who is following one of those greater good gods, then they would be more along the lines of what you'd consider good. And I know I'm just rambling and whatnot. She's got this weird little collar thing that looks like the bottom half of a helmet, but she doesn't have the top half, so I'm not really sure what the point of this little thing right here is supposed to be. But then I guess it doesn't really have to have a point. It's fantasy character. There we go, with the black and whatnot. Yeah, black and red seems like a pretty good setup for her. I like how she's looking so far. I think instead of brown, I'm gonna paint that front bit black so that I can actually see how thin my black is so that the brown still shows up. But this is a new thing for me. I know I keep saying it. Not like... it's not like I'm no expert, no professional. I'm not. But I do like how that looks with the black and the brown. I just don't know how well it actually shows up on the screen. I've got a giant TV in front of me that I'm watching the stream on, but with the light on me, it's kind of hard to tell. Okay, I'm gonna let her dry. Well, no, let me put in the details on this. I think owl. I'm probably gonna have to Google which god this paladin, or which deity this paladin likely follows with an owl symbol, because off the top of my head, I have no clue. No clue at all. Okay, let her dry. You know what? Let's paint a dragon. I got this nice big piece here. It's good that I got it for my birthday. And it's supposed to be a young blue dragon with kind of, I've wrapped the clear part of the mount, and I haven't super glued it yet because I know I'm going to be doing a lot of detailing and moving it around, so I will probably want to have it off, but let's paint a dragon. Probably start with a nice, should have blues now. I just have the one ultramarine blue. Don't worry if that first layer looks terrible. First layers always look absolutely terrible. You see, this is good blue paint and it was barely going on. But first layers look terrible. The point is to get the paint on so that the next layer of paint has something to stick to. Because this has been primed, but you see how there's little itty bitty little bubbles coming up. So supposedly this was pre-primed and I trusted that, but maybe in the future I will prime it myself. And I use Army Prime, spray prime, as well as Vallejo gesso when I need to paint it on. Like the emotes in the chat, they're cute. Love Twitch emotes. Twitch emotes are cute, and the fact that each channel can make their own, I think that's pretty cool. I'm what you would technically call an elder millennial. So streaming came into forefront of my knowledge later on in my life. YouTube was where it was at back in the day. Oh my god, YouTube. Remember what YouTube used to be like. But yeah, see, it just, that first layer always looks gross no matter what. So I'll work on the inside of these wings. I think it is a young blue dragon, and I think I will stick to that. But I would like to get some good gradients in there at some point. From light and dark, because this is still growing boy. And dragon models have lots of lovely wingspan and scale detail that make washes show up all that much better. Yeah, just like, I love how textured the tail is. Doing all those itty bitty little bits is going to be so much fun when it comes down to it. And model painting is a patience thing. It definitely is a patience thing. Let me switch paintbrushes. I have my good paintbrushes, and I have the paintbrushes that I don't really care about. I try and protect the good paintbrushes because, you know, they are more expensive, and since those are the ones that I have with very fine points on them, I want to protect those points. Because nothing will ruin a brush faster than having it be just like this little brush. You see where all the little hairs are coming off of it? Yeah. This is one of the brushes I use kind of to just scrub back and forth because I no longer care about it keeping its uniform shape. And that's okay. It doesn't have to keep that shape for me. But I think with this blue dragon, I might go with more of an icy color scheme. Kind of when you first start a model, first thing you always want to do is figure out what's going to be the hardest points to the paint. Where's going to be hardest to get in? Like, the mouth is going to be hard. and probably in between the legs. If you can take your paintbrush and stick it and it touches more than what you want to paint, then I would call that a difficult spot. There isn't too many on here. That's why I like dragons, and I recommend wings or capes creatures for beginners, because they're a lot easier to paint. Because you don't have to worry too much about having to repaint. You don't have to worry too much about messing up. Though messing up is a very subjective thing, because you can always either paint it back over or scrub it off. But I think this guy came with his own little stand. And he has a breath weapon. I'm not quite sure yet how to paint, or at least I don't remember how to paint the more translucents. When in doubt, Google it or YouTube it. But that's how, like recently when I was trying to figure out how to do wounds, because for the life of me I could not remember how to paint a bruise to make it look bruise-like. YouTube is my best friend, because there are plenty of people who make videos. And I work with a lot of older people, older generation. I mean, my parents are in their late 60s. I'm the youngest child, but they're in their late 60s. I've had to teach them a lot of technology, even though they are like incredibly smart people, but technology is hard. It's ever changing, and goodness knows when a phone update comes out that changes stuff up, I have to help my parents out and fix it. Probably one of the things I regret is teaching my mother how to use emojis, because dear God, I think for almost a year, every single text message she ever sent me was either entirely emojis or was mostly comprised of emojis. And I'm an Android person, so I have an Android, but both my parents have iPhones, and my fiance has an iPhone too, so I'm the odd one out in this instance. So I know if you have an iPhone, you know what I'm talking about, the me emojis that you can make of your own, like, personal person kind of thing. So I see those a lot in the text messages that I get. Though I do love how my mom's kind of customized it to herself, changed the hair color now that she's let her gray hair grow out. My fiance for a while, I think he like gave his a mohawk or something. It looked funky. It looked like him, but a very punk version of him. Though the translation between Android and iPhone for emojis doesn't always come through. Like, it's if you know, with iPhones you can do the whole, I'd say, reaction things where you can tap on a message or photo and you can like it or heart it or put thumbs up and stuff. When you do that with an Android phone, I found out, I instead get a text message that says so and so liked this picture, so and so has put a heart on this photo or this text message. Even worse, iPhones can do a sort of subject line, like for emails, but they can do a subject line, and it's so Sage has so much fun sending me text messages with things in the subject line, because it just turns it into text instead of having it as a visual. Like, when it goes from iPhone to Android, it looks weird, and it sends me multiple messages. So when we send a lot of memes to each other. Like, that's primarily how we How we communicate is via memes. So I'll send him a bunch of memes during the day when he's working. And then at some point, either when he's on a break or in the evening, I'll just get a whole bunch of Sage liked this, Sage hearted this, Sage disliked an image, Sage liked an image, and I'll get like 6 or like 7 text messages if he's trying to be particularly annoying, which we do lovingly to each other. And if I'm trying to annoy the bejesus out of him, all I have to do is send him anything that is ooh-woo. My God, I can make that man cringe from several rooms away. Because I can do, I'm not doing it on stream, but I can do a pretty good ooh-woo voice. If you don't know what I'm talking about, you're too young for me. There was an age of the internet with rar lol speak, and some of my lingo is still stuck there because of course it was during my formative years. But sometimes I can find the most ridiculous woo memes and send it to him, and then we'll be like, he'll be in the patio reading and I'll be in bed, or I'll be in my office and he'll be playing on the Xbox, and he'll just come and just stand in the doorway looking at me like, what are you doing? Why'd you, yes, ooh, yes, all the, like, why'd you send this to me? But I will punish him for coming to complain about it, because then I'll pull out the ooh-woo voice and he'll run away, and running joke is that he can't return me. There's no returns, no refunds, no exchanges. And our relationship kind of is ragging on each other in a way, but in a fun way. But I browse Imager more than him because he gets kind of dragged down into the news, political news kind of black hole on there, and I know how to set the tags so that I don't get that kind of stuff. But he likes to read, like, not just read. This man reads fanfics that are millions. Oh my God, Ubu tweet almost destroyed the U.S. Army's. I will. Oh my God, I would love to know that story. But he reads fanfics that are millions of words long. Like, it's like, I think recent ones were from Danny Phantom to what was the anime one that was an isekai that he was reading? But if he was in publishing, he'd be a great editor, because his like superpower is finding kind of plot holes and critiquing. He can critique very, very well. So I send him memes, and then he tells me about whatever the latest story that he is reading. I think a memorable one. He doesn't always send them to me to read because I don't have. Yes, I'm sitting here painting models, but I don't have the patience to read like hundreds of chapters of a fanfic. I'm not much of a fanfic reader. I like videos better, or fanfic art, or fan art. But one of the more memorable ones that he read not too long ago that he actually sent me was set in the he loves Harry Potter. There's a lot of Harry Potter fanfics that he reads, and my God, there's a lot of good writers out there who've written absolutely amazing stories. But the premise was that Harry was turned into a dragon, like an actual dragon, from, I believe, the beginning, from Dursleys on, and everyone kind of just rolled with it and didn't treat it as odd. So you had this giant hairy dragon or Harry Potter dragon. It was like size of a house, going to school. So yes, let's put wizard robes and a hat on a dragon, and everyone just kind of treated him perfectly fine. And it was, I read it and I don't remember, I wish I remembered it better, but it was kind of one of the funniest ones I've read. And he usually reads stuff on AO3. So we trade information. He'll tell me about how stupid people are being in his story, and I will send him god-awful memes that sometimes make him cringe. The cringier, the better. But things that we find funny, and then trying to get a good layer of blue on this dragon, but it's how we love each other. He has this annoying, he got this annoying toy, and I hate it. I hate it so much. It's a screaming goat, and he'll come up behind me with it in his hands, and he'll give me a hug, and then he'll make the goat scream in my ear, and I hate it so much. I feel like I got him back a little bit today, because my parents are out of town, and they have 2 dogs, so we're taking turns watching their house. So he stayed over at their place the last 2 nights, and I'll stay over there tonight. But I came to the house this morning just in time to see him putting his boots on. And it was before the dogs had seen me and started barking. So I ran up as quick as I could, and I rang the doorbell, and he jumped like 5 feet in the air, and all I hear is all this cursing and F you and screw you and why would you do this to me? But oh, it was so worth it, because I'm usually the one who is easily spooked, or I flinch fairly easily. But no, it was nice to get him back for that. See, I love these dragon figurines. These are good quality from, I think Reaper is one of the big companies. And even though I've got that first layer in, you can still see those individual little scales. And this first layer, since I'm talking and painting at the same time, which is new for me. Normally I just listen to other streamers while I paint. So this first layer is acting as a wash as well as the first layer, because I've watered it down so much. It's kind of pooling in the cracks. But all those lovely segments means that it's gonna, I like painting the itty bitty little bits. I can't sit and read a story for hours on end, but I can certainly paint for hours on end, and then I'll look up and realize, oh man, need to take the dog outside, need to eat something, oh god, you when you sit so still for forever and you get up and your body catches you up on everything that you haven't done, like you need to eat, you need to go to the bathroom, your legs are asleep, just kind of like getting in that zone. I'm pretty good at that. And honestly, a lot of the same paints, actually, the paints that I use are the same paints I use for canvas paints or canvas paintings. At least for, like, this blues comes from one of the big tubes that I use. And it, like, you can spend a lot of money, like, oh my god, Citadel, if you know the brand for miniature painting, Citadel is so expensive. They can be worth it at times, But oh man, Citadel is so expensive. Even their paintbrushes are just stupid expensive. You know somebody's rolling when you see Unpainted and they have a whole row of Citadel paints. Like, I think a basic pack that I have on my wish list, like for someday, is like $150 to $175. Like, woof, to me, that's expensive. So I just use cheap paints. It means you have to put more layers, but it works. Someday it'd be kind of cool as a hobbyist to get I've always wanted a 3D printer. 3D printers are the coolest thing. Like watching the evolution of 3D printers. I know nowadays it's kind of all about what's it called when... Yeah, Citadel did used to be the bomb, but I've heard people say that it's really not worth the price anymore. One thing I know that people do like are the handles that you can get that holds a figurine. Those work pretty well, but then you've got me, and I've got a pill bottle, and that's my figurine handle, and that works perfectly well for me. But some figurines are too awkward. But honestly, I don't find their regular paints to be worthwhile, and I don't find their paintbrushes to be worthwhile. Vallejo's a bit better, but their paints feel like they're skimp on the pigment, and the less pigment that a paint has, the thinner the color is. Like a really, really fancy, good, expensive blue, I would put this layer on and you wouldn't be able to see that gray anymore, really. But the more pigment it has, the more expensive it is. But Vallejo, which is another well-known brand, I like their primers and their sealants, but honestly, just get what you can afford and work with it. If you have to paint more layers, then so what? Need some more blue. Fancy tools don't always mean fancy results. You still have to have the actual, I wouldn't say the skill, experience of painting. I think no matter your skill or talent level, your beginning stuff will always look terrible, and you'll get better as time moves on. Yeah, I'm glad that I'm using one of the chibi brushes on all these little spines, because if I was using one of the Army Painter has the same issue. Boo. I mostly use Army Painter. I have the giant spray cans for primer, and that's what I mostly use them for, is their spray can stuff. And what is it with, companies that like start off really, really well, and then as time goes on, they just, I know it's like a capitalism thing and all that, and we live in the late stage capitalism and all that, but I know that Citadel used to be fairly revered, at least back in my early college years, fairly revered for what it was, and everyone used it. But then by the time I finished at that college and was ready to move out, people had swapped to other brands and didn't use Citadel as much anymore, which sucks. I mean, that sucks for Citadel because, losing out, but if they hadn't made such terrible paints, then maybe people wouldn't be switching. They're probably saving money by doing less pigments, but they're losing customers in the meantime. Now I sound like an old person complaining about how things used to be, and it used to be better. Some things used to be better, but a lot of things were a lot worse. Oh, I forgot to paint the spines on the wings. I personally have way too much painting supplies because I am an addict, and if you send me to an art store, I am going to buy something. I am taking a class this semester to ease back into being at college after being sick and whatnot. So I had to go get some supplies for it, and I walked out with way more supplies than I really needed. I was like, well, if I'm here, then I want new paintbrushes. I mean, can't have a new class without new paintbrushes. Oh, if I'm gonna get new paintbrushes, I might as well get, you know, some of the special paints. Oh, if I'm gonna use the special paints, then I need to use the high quality canvas or the high quality paper. And it just kind of, yeah, there went my budget for the month. And then the next month I went over to the gathering place and was like, I need just a couple of minis to get back into the groove. And I think I walked out with so much more than what I had originally planned. And you know what? I can't wait till I've got a little bit saved up and go back there, because what is it they say about book lovers? That book buying and book reading are two separate hobbies. I think it's the same for D&D stuff. Buying D&D stuff and using D&D stuff are two separate hobbies. Because I think anybody who plays D&D has way more dice than they should, because the shiny click-clacks, you need more of them, and then you walk into... God, Harry was the owner of the Dragon's Hoard, where I used to spend all my weekend and all my time, and he had a lovely display of, like, he got some of the really pretty dice, and he'd put them right at the counter, so that when you bought snacks and you had to look at the pretty dice. Every time you came up to the counter, you had to see the new dice. And I never did get a chance to buy them, but a wish list item, he had very nice dice that were made out of semi-precious stones. I think the garnet and the cat's eye were my two favorites, and I always wanted to, at the time, when I was working and going to college at the same time, to save up and buy them, but I never did because they were out of my price range. But I think if I did buy them, I wouldn't end up using them because they're so shiny and so nice, but I don't want to ruin them by using them. They're just too pretty. I'm a sucker for the more sparkly galaxy. I think there was a specific style that came out. I can't remember what it was called, but I bought that style in every color that Harry sold. Every color. And I have my Crown Royal bag, as is the traditional dice bag, full of these. It was like space, kind of galaxy sparkly, and I loved it. I loved it so much. And you know, it's also good to have a bunch of different sets of dice, because if your D20 is being very badly behaved, then you can swap out to another one, because when you're playing, if you have bad luck on that die or that day, we're a suspicious lot. We're not going to use it. And if you do get one where you get like a couple of good rolls in a row, you know that your next rolls are going to absolutely suck, because you used up all your good luck on those rolls. I'm kind of glad that this thing has a stand, because holding it by its spikes, it's kind of painful, to be honest. Look at that face. Isn't that a cute little face? And his little weird little ear fins things. He's a baby. He's a young dragon who's already 10 times the size of a standard NPC or a standard humanoid. But he's just a baby. You know, I have to say I'm kind of enjoying painting here because at home we have the office where computer is and also where I paint and whatnot. And I have a 100-pound Shiloh Shepherd, which is like a German Shepherd, but they're bigger and they don't have the health problems or the hip dysplasia, though mine ended up with some for a different reason. But her name's Kona. She's my first ever breeder dog. I've done rescue and adoption my whole life. And I used to foster and work with Malamutes, Alaskan Malamutes and Huskies back in Virginia. I was part of CHAMP, CHAAMP, and worked with them and kind of fostering, helping, caring for. So Kona's my first ever breeder dog, and she's a spoiled princess. Oh, and my fiance will say that, oh, he hates that dog, and the dog doesn't like her. And then I come in and I find him cooing on the floor, giving her belly rubs and calling her a pretty princess. So that man is a liar. But she's a big dog. She's also a very long dog. Like, she finished growing her size and then she grew in length somehow. So I am 5'6", and she can put her paws on my shoulders if she wants to. Not quite Great Dane size, but getting up there. But she used to be able to fit under my desk, and nowadays she can't. So she shows me that she can't fit under my desk because she will come in and get under the desk and then get uncomfortable because it's kind of a tight fit and mom's feet are in the way, and don't you know that all the space is hers. So she'll stand up and bump her back on the desk, like lifting it a little bit. So whatever I'm painting, a giant streak will go across the whatever the canvas is, or if a figurine, then I just spill paint everywhere. But yeah, it's kind of nice painting here where I don't have to shuffle my feet or kick this giant baby of a dog out of my office every 45 minutes or so that I can get some work done. And she'll huff and sigh, and I don't know which of us taught her how to sigh like a drama queen, but we regret it so much because she's a brat. I don't know if I'm allowed to say this on stream, but one of her nicknames is, or I call her a big baby bitch, because she is big. She's the prissiest baby, and she's a bit of a bitch at times. I hope I'm allowed to curse on stream. But yeah, working in that office can be a bit hard because she'll come in, try and settle, get unhappy that she can't fit. So she'll move around into the office or under one of the other desks, and then eventually she'll give up and she'll sit in the doorway and every 5 minutes or so sigh. And a dog that's 100 pounds and fairly long in length, she can heave some very dramatic, gusty sighs when she wants to. Again, I don't know who taught her how to sigh, but she knows. She also knows I have a dog who can roll her eyes at me. There's nothing more infuriating than having this animal just roll her eyes at you when you... There's nothing like it. She's definitely different from all the dogs that I've had in the past that have been rescues. Oh, and you know how I said that the Shiloh Shepherds are supposed to not have that hip dysplasia issue that German Shepherds do? Well, mine ended up with a hip issue anyways, because it turns out I didn't find out till later, she was the runt of the litter. She's 100 pounds. I think I found her siblings via Facebook in like the first couple years I had her. And I think they're all like 120, 100 something, like 120, 110, probably a little bit bigger. I know her mom was the big one. She's beautiful, black and fluffy, and apparently her name was Storm. And she was a whopping like 125 pounds. She was a big dog. But then I like big dogs. I prefer giant couch potatoes that can crush you when they sit down. That's what I like. Which you can and you know what? I think I probably got myself into. It's probably my fault that my dog knows how to sigh, because if you've known a husky, you know that they're drama queens. They're absolute drama queens. They're screaming drama queens. And I would make fun. I would rah right back at the huskies, and I probably taught Kona how to do that. So that's my own damn fault, or her own darn fault. But that's something that I haven't gotten as much into moving here. It used to be that I would work with Champ. And I also used to since I had such fluffy dogs, because with huskies and malamutes, you need to groom them and you need to get them used to grooming. So I would have a nice collection of brushes and everything, and I would volunteer by going to the shelter. And you'd be surprised that or maybe wouldn't be surprised, but a lot of shelter dogs, they really do need a good brushing. The people who work there have a lot to do, so when volunteers can come in, it's always welcome, as long as, they know what they're doing. But I would get a dog, and I'd take him for a walk, or I'd take him home for a little bit. And that was before I had Kona, and I didn't have any dogs at home. And I'd give him a good brushing, and get them used to it, because some of them were not, with being abandoned or being found, not really feral, but just out in the wild. They needed to get used to human touch again, and brushing was a great way to do that. So I'd have this giant bag of treats or whatever would work for that dog, and work with them, and it was very soothing. I'd almost compare it to painting, where you're sitting there and you're working on their fur bit by bit, and then it's such a transformation for a lot of them, especially with longer haired dogs. Usually I'd give them a good brushing, and then we'd maybe retake their adoption photos when they were looking better, because a good photo will help a dog get adopted that much faster. And I kind of miss that. Kind of miss doing that. I don't think I have as much time in my schedule to do it, but it was nice. I didn't do cats very often, because it turns out I can be fairly allergic to cat scratches or whatever is in their claws. My skin's sensitive. I've got a couple of autoimmune issues and disorders. So for me, it was a lot easier to work with a dirty, dander-covered dog than it was to work with a cat. Though I don't mind cats. I do like cats, but I like dogs better. I love that some of them have 2 brain cells, and they love you with all 2 of their brain cells. One of my parents' dog is like that, Alicia. She's a mini Australian Shepherd, and she's one of the she's a breeder dog, but she's special because my mom isn't allergic to her. She's got that specially bred fur that doesn't have as much of the dander or whatever sets my mom off. But she's got these blue eyes, bright like blue eyes, but they've got like weird bits of brown in them. So she looks like she's staring in, like not like staring into your soul intensely, but we call her Crazy Eyes with good reason. And she's very smart. She knows she's being trained by my dad for like scent training and whatnot, but she really just has 2 brain cells. And when she gets excited, and she really likes me, like, and spazzes out when she sees me, her whole body just wiggles. And there's nothing like greeting a dog who is so excited to see you that you know that their whole brain is just so excited to see you. That kind of unconditional love is amazing. But then we get back to my dog, and my dog is a cat. I don't know what I did raising this puppy, who's now 5 years old. I don't know what I did to this dog, but she's a cat. She wants to be petted when she wants to be petted. She'll let you know when she is done being petted. She didn't quite get toys for a while. She gets them now, especially squeaky ones and chew toys. She's a prissy princess about her food. It has to be the right brand. And we can do the whole, leave the food out, pick it up after a certain time, and then she just won't eat. And then she'll just go, 2 weeks without eating because it's not the right food. That's the sort of princess that I have on my hands. But she's such a sweetie. She doesn't do well with new people, but she is great with other dogs. Like when I first got her, I was still working with some, adoption centers and whatnot, and she was a great dog to introduce other dogs to, because she was just so happy to see them. She was super friendly. She knew how to, even though she's a big dog, she knew how to be gentle, or she knows how to be gentle. I don't know why I'm talking about her in the past tense. I can't really take her to a crowd of people or take her to a park and have people pet her, but I can take her to a dog park and she'll get along with everybody there. And that's kind of a good thing. Yeah, this is such a thin blue. I'm gonna have to probably goop it up pretty well to get a solid, but yeah, you can see there's that first layer, and then here's the second and third layer, and you can really just like see the difference in it already. And even just partially painting it, you can see, like, I love this model. This model has great texture. You can see, I didn't paint that texture. That texture is just part of the figurine. I don't know. I like painting dragons. Painting dragons are fun. I think once I finish up doing this coat, I will probably finish up the stream for the day. I think my streams are going to be Thursdays around this mid-afternoon time, depending. Yeah. I think I'll focus on bigger models to paint here, because with little ones, I need to hold them closer to my face, and also they just don't show up very well on the camera. So I think bigger ones are a way to go. And hey, any excuse to go out and buy a whole bunch of new models that I need to paint, wow, it's such a burden. It's so terrible. I need to buy cool stuff, cool big things to paint. I think one of the other big ones I have at home is a T-Rex, and I'm kind of excited to paint that one, though I'm going to come up with probably a pretty vibrant color scheme for him. I don't want to just be boring, greens and browns and stuff like that you sometimes see. I want to see some very pretty colors in my dinosaur. It's more of a reptilian style rather than the more currently understood bird-like, so it doesn't really have any fun feathers or crests, but I can probably paint in some of that. But hey, now knowing that I need the bigger ones, I will be very happy to go out and get more. Maybe next month. Next month's budget probably is the end of October anyways. Okay. You know what? I think I will probably... I'll wait for... see if he pops back up, because I don't know how to shut down the stream. Oh, goodness. You gotta be careful with wet paint, because sometimes you rub off what you just painted and then you gotta go back and overdo it again. That's why having the figurine holder works really well, because then you aren't holding those wet bits. Okay. Let me give that tail a dip, and then I will probably call it quits. Because since I am still watching over my parents' dogs until they get back tomorrow, I need to go let my own dog out and get her settled for the evening, and then head over to my parents and take care of their dogs. And I have to stay overnight because one of them I had to take to the vet this morning. She's some sort of skin reaction, so I got to keep an eye on her and keep spraying her, because whenever I see her scratching, so somebody's got to stay with her. Okay. I'll call that good. Let me see.